So, here we are with the Shark Scale, and today's movie has a number of titles. It's known as Sharkzilla, Megalodon 2002, Megalodon 2003, Megalodon 2004, and Megalodon. So we got 4 or 5 different freaking titles for this movie, but here we are. It's about a giant shark in the snow. It came out in the early 2000s, clearly. Nobody seems to know what freaking year it came out. Especially depends on what country you live in. But the point is that we're going to look at this movie. It's actually a bit more the well-known ones from the mid to early 2000s, it seems. And I think it was on Ranker. They even had this above like Shark Attack 1 through 3. So, ooh, that's like a big deal. It's on Ranker. Oh, well, you know what? The bottom line is, let's just get right into the movie.
So despite the many names for this movie, the plot is quite simple. Out in the Arctic, a new oil rig has shown up, as in been constructed, that apparently can reach new depths for oil. Well, a news reporter and her cameraman go to this giant oil rig to get the scoop basically on it for the world. There, they meet the crew and people who are just really trying to get oil, really. There's a bunch of talk of environmental impact and all that fun stuff, but is pretty much just written off as everyone is killing the environment, what we're doing doesn't really affect it. Well, when they are showing off their oil rig, let's just say our favorite friend in the sea decides to pay them a visit. Not only is it our favorite friend in the sea, but because they're actually so deep in a previously unexplored depth, it happens to be the prehistoric version, a Megalodon actually. The plot is very basic and extremely simple to understand. I also just explained the first hour and 10 minutes of the movie right there. Despite being extremely easy to understand, the movie moves at an incredibly slow pace. It is ridiculous how slow this movie is. The first 55 minutes of the movie is spent of just the humans talking about environmental impact, getting oil, and it being live on TV. Literally, that's it. Nothing else happens of any importance. They try to build up these characters, give them some depth, no pun intended, but it comes off as just incredibly shallow, contrived, and all around boring. They really sell this whole environmental messaging really hard, and it's honestly the strongest part of the movie. They're really trying to send a message here clearly, and I think it does work to some extent as I thought about it for more than 30 seconds, but they hammer it home a little too hard. Really, I'm gonna just say what the plot is in one word, and that's boring. The movie is just boring. Like, nothing happens, and when it finally does, you're already fast asleep. Almost an hour in before the shark shows up. Are you kidding me? How do you expect anyone to still be watching the movie by then? Like, even with all those titles, you have to wait this long for the shark to show up. The last 15 minutes or so is actually decent, but it's bogged down by an hour of crap. The plot doesn't develop in any meaningful way, the characters don't develop in any meaningful way, and the arcs just go nowhere. They create them and literally go nowhere. The ending really falls flat as well. In fact, I would say the entire plot of the movie is just bad. It's uninteresting, goes nowhere, and fails to entice any emotions, thoughts, or interest. But enough about the plot. When it comes to the shark and how often it's on screen, well, I already brought that up as well. The shark isn't in the first 55 minutes of the movie. I have never had to wait this long for a shark to show up in a shark movie. This has got to be some record, honestly, for making you wait for the shark. 55 minutes before it gets a second of screen time. Like, really, this is a joke. Nowhere. It's not present at all. They don't even mention it. After those 55 minutes, when it decides to finally show up, I will say it is in pretty much the rest of the movie. It's in basically every scene. But the movie is like an hour and 15 minutes long. So how much of the movie really is even left by then? The screen time that it gets at the end of the movie is actually quite decent, I will say. But again, 55 minutes before the shark shows up. That just kills it straight up. It's got terrible screen time because of that. Now, while the shark isn't in basically the whole movie, for the little parts it's in, and it does show up in a little bit of it, it does get some kills. It's actually decently done kills as well. Because the shark is so giant, it's actually able to eat up a mini sub, basically. I will say that the 3 kills that it has in this movie aren't totally terrible. They're decent enough, especially for the early 2000s, and they were actually quite unique, and for the time, really unique. This movie was a bit ahead of its time with its setting and shark kills, or ahead of its time at least for a shark movie. It's just a shame that they're at the very end of the movie when you've already changed the channel or watched something else. And when it comes to the CGI of the shark, this was actually quite decent as well. It was actually really decent, especially for when the movie came out. CGI was just getting its big foothold that it has now, and this movie was doing some decent CGI during this time. The shark actually looks quite good and is animated well. It doesn't look like a toy or a piece of plastic crap. No, it looks alright. It's a bit stiff, I won't deny that, but I think it was animated well for the time. Compared to movies that came out at the very same year, or at least the same time, like Shark Attack 3, it looks much better. Shark Attack 3 just looks nowhere near as good as this in terms of CGI, but it's a shame that, unlike Shark Attack 3, the shark isn't in this movie like at all. Because when the shark does show up, it's actually good in terms of CGI and kills. The other effects present in this movie were decent enough for the most part, the sets and the water effects. I think the main issue with the other effects is the snow in this movie is just out of control. Like, you literally can't see like anything in this movie when the snow is going. And I get that's the point, that you're not supposed to see anything, but it was just out of control. Like, it was just too much. It was just a little too much. The acting in this movie was just boring. I really don't have much to comment on here because I really am unsure. The actors at least try to do something. They try to get their point across. It's not horrible, it's just uninspired. It's at a consistently low level the entire movie and never gets any better. It starts uninspired and it ends the same way. I didn't feel that one character was better than anyone else. I thought everyone was really bland and generic and they were all really on the same level. It just made the 55 minutes without the shark feel like 2.5 hours because everyone was so bland and boring. There isn't even a comic relief character here either. It's just a bunch of serious dudes and literally one woman who talk about the underwater world and the environment and oil and other crap that I've forgotten about. There's just nothing exciting here. If they were trying to go for all realistic, boring ass people, then they sure got it. But does this make an entertaining movie? No. Does this make a good documentary? Yes, but that is not this movie, and I do not review documentaries. They just did their job in this movie, which is pretty boring. This brings us to the conclusion of the movie, and I think it's pretty clear what I think of this film. It is boring. In one word, boring. I mentioned the movie's boring. The movie fails to interest or intrigue me on any level because it fails at both. 55 minutes before the shark shows up in any movie titled Megalodon, Sharkzilla, whatever it is bad. This is just unacceptable, really. And sure, the shark is in the rest of the movie, but that's like 15 minutes, and that doesn't make up for 55 minutes of crap. It's just a shame too because, like I said, when the shark does finally show up, the kills are actually good. I think the shark looks good, and I think for a monster movie it was a bit ahead of its time. I really think they could have had something here if they just instead spaced the shark out throughout the movie and had it present in most of the movie, but that's not the case. What we have is a slog of a movie with boring scientist talk. The movie starts out pretty uninteresting and stays that way for far too long. I can see what they were doing with the environmental messaging, but the movie is just not entertaining. I found myself checking the time over and over just to see when I could get on with my life and watch something else because I was just not having it with this movie. It's one thing to watch a bad movie, and it's another to be completely bored by a movie, and that's what this movie did. When the shark finally did show up, it woke me up a little bit, and then the movie's over, and I was like, well, that's it. That was a movie. That was a thing. I just wasted my time. So in conclusion, it's pretty obvious what the movie gets on the shark scale. There's only one rating for a movie that bores me so much, and that's a 1 out of 5. It could have been so much more, but in the end, this movie is just a snooze fest, and you wouldn't miss anything by skipping it in its entirety. I've already shown you the best parts anyway, to be honest. The movie is actually in its entirety on YouTube, ready to watch for free as well. So if you really want to watch the shark scenes for some reason, you can click the link in the description. And in fact, I'll even copy what time the shark shows up and put that link in the description. It shows up at about 55 minutes and it is in the rest of the movie. The rest of the movie, not worth watching. 15 minutes though of actually alright, just doesn't cut it for me. I didn't have any fun watching the movie. It wasn't even somewhat entertaining. It wasn't even cringy or bad or poorly filmed. None of that. It was just in sleep-inducing in a genre that really thrives off action and killing, and it just failed completely. And with that said, I wouldn't even recommend you bother with this movie, but I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's your own damn life. That's the bottom line. But in conclusion, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. You could like, you could subscribe, you could comment, you could tell me I suck, you could tell me you hate my guts. I don't know anything about shark movies, even though I've reviewed 50 plus of them now, which you can check out on my channel. I have a Twitter if you guys want to follow that. But in conclusion, thanks for watching, guys. Have a nice Christmas.